Rise and shine.
Bob Ferguson.
I was a part of the French 75.
Bitch, I felt like Tony Montana!
Viva la revolution!
Welcome back. Welcome to another one. I'm excited to get to this review. I apologize for the delay. I saw the movie and had to sit with it for a little bit because I feel like I have some pretty harsh critiques on this particular film. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so as you know, we're doing the Savvy Breakdown. Check it out in other videos. It's how we critique our films this year and moving forward. And so Savvy is just an acronym for story, acting, visuals, vibes, and impact. And so our review for One Battle After Another is going to follow the same critique. And so let's go ahead and dive into the story. First off, the best way to explain the story for me was chaotic. It was an absolutely chaotic story. It was all over the place. I felt like it struggled to find a consistent tone. I felt like there were a lot of bold ideas in here, and they decided just to force them all into this one story. And I think at the end, it took away from all the voices. You know, you try to have everybody speak at once, nobody gets heard. And this video very much struggled from that. I feel like a lot of people can take different things from this movie and be like, I really like that part, but I hated everything else. Or somebody else will be like, I really like that ending, but I hated everything else. This is that kind of movie. There'll be moments where you're like, man, if they just focused on this thing here, it would be so good. But they didn't, and they decided to make it chaotic and just threw all these random things into one without being cohesive. And honestly, I don't think enough research was done, and I'll get into that more as well. And so in regards to going back to the story, I feel like they didn't tackle serious topics. They tried to tackle serious topics and didn't land as heavy as I feel like they were trying to make it land. And that's because there was notes of goofiness throughout the entire movie. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio's character alone was extremely goofy, and the music and the soundtrack added an element of goofy to the story that felt like, okay, am I supposed to really be feeling something here? I mean, this guy's playing this pretty serious. There are moments of some pretty serious tension, but they built the characters up as being so goofy. It's hard to really invest and to feel that you're on the journey with them in a really serious way. There are moments that were good enough to make you feel like this could have been interesting, but again, you'll have to kind of ignore all of everything else around it in order to really get into the parts that you do like. And that for me is a particular gripe that I have with some movies that try to be everything. You have to pick something and stick with it, or be able to mix these things together and give them the appropriate attention that they need. In certain moments of this movie, you will feel the gravity and the danger, especially as it's attached to current times in regards to ICE and domestic attacks that are happening in this country. And this movie clearly is winking at it, but then doesn't give us enough time to really feel it and appreciate it for what it was. The scenes were short, and they only explored them on a cursory level, which I felt didn't do it any justice, because honestly, those were the best parts of the film. Also, I don't think we missed the irony of them using the president from Scandal and Tony Godwin to represent the white nationals organization that you'll see in the movie. I thought that was a rather compelling group to add into there, but they didn't give us a lot of time to really sit with them and to get a good feeling of, okay, where they come from, how big is this? You know, it just was thrown in there. It was an interesting element which in a lot of Leonardo DiCaprio movies there seem to be now, which I like, and I'm a huge Leonardo DiCaprio fan, so I appreciate that he picks roles that does show that element that we don't see much in movies, but they didn't spend a lot of time with it. Story's peak for me was when the Benicio del Toro's character is introduced, and they showed the inner workings of the organized sanctuary community for immigrants. It was fascinating watching him navigate the community into action, albeit with the constant background notes of mentioning Harriet Tubman and an odd line in Gil Scott-Heron poems being recited. I thought that was a little heavy-handed. I don't know if it really fit into those particular scenes. Not because there isn't a parallel or something to draw from it. It just came out of nowhere when he was just like, yeah, I kind of like the Harriet Tubman. It was weird. Also, what was up with the heavy Modelo marketing that was in this movie? Again, the movie forces these awkward humans interactions into the movie, but then they cut in by having him drink 6-packs for essentially the entire time that he was in the movie. I mean, it was a recurring theme, and that ties back into the goofy notes of this movie that I said that it has, and it just leaves you thinking like, why? Why are you forcing Modelo in here like this? This is a clearly a very serious moment happening right now. Why is he drinking a six pack of Modelo? Not only in one scene, but honestly throughout. After we've introduced, after we get introduced to him again with Leonardo DiCaprio, and they get to the to his house, he is drinking Modelo for the rest of the film. It's odd. Um, Next, the Persephone is a horribly written character with not enough context on her ethos, coming off as the most satirical character, but is yet forced into the backseat and consistently treated like a sex-crazed object. They essentially throw her away after presenting a really dangerous idea of how she's just sex-crazed throughout the movie. I felt like that was a really dangerous way to depict that character, and then to decide to change her ethnicity and then to like turn up that sexuality. I thought was an odd decision, and if you're going to go that route, you then have to give her more focus and allow for us to really understand why she is this way. He doesn't give you any of that. And this brought in several serious topics for me that the movie played with and specifically disrespected, like the off character of the jungle pussy, who they just kill off screen as if it meant nothing. And why introduce that character with such a strong name and then kill her off later on? So I found that to be a bit off-putting and really left a bad taste in my mouth. They introduced Regina Hall's character, who was equally nothing in my opinion. She was just a plot device that was used to move other characters around. Her journey for me was extremely unsatisfying and awkward all the way through to the end, with her character being ushered off with a look of defeat on her face. She never really showed strength, and I was looking for that for her character. But largely, she was just quiet, listening to what other main characters were saying to her, and so it was just these particular characters weren't fleshed out. And for a movie this long, you would think there would be more focus on the characters, but there was so much going on that they couldn't pull it all together and didn't want to cut things out. Honestly, I think the beginning of the movie could have been cut for me. The most insignificant, least interesting part was the beginning, because the beginning had very little to do with when the story really kicked off, when they went into hiding, because we met Jungle Pussy and some of her characters in this feminist leaning radical group, but they never really went into the organization. They were just there so the Persephone character can snitch on them and get them all killed. Another very heavy moment in the movie that I'm like, are they trying to make this seem goofy? Because this just seems like a really extreme thing to do. I mean, she snitched on her comrades, and they ended up getting assassinated. But this movie just, I really don't understand the tone of it or what the director was going for. And honestly, in this particular time and space that we're in, it came off to me as extremely disrespectful. And I felt the story was a lot stronger in the original. And I'm not really feeling it at all. If you haven't already got my gist on that. Acting. Okay, let's dive into acting, because as you already know, a lot of my friends already know, I was excited about this movie at first when I saw the actors that were in it. I'm a Sean Penn fan. I'm a huge Leonardo DiCaprio fan. I believe he's one of the greats already, and I expected no less of him in this movie. He did the best he could do with the babbling, confused, and conflicted ghetto pat character that he was given. Uh, I don't think that he took anything away from the movie, but he didn't necessarily add anything extra to it either. It was really the story that held his character back. And at the end of the movie, it largely felt like, why was the story centered around him in the first place? He was the least interesting element of the movie. His character was the least interesting element of the movie. And so it kind of gave me the Last Great Samurai kind of feels in this movie. I guess you could call it the Last Great Radical type of feel, because why is he centered here? It was ridiculous. The Sean Penn character as well presented possibly the potential of being one of the most notorious villains this year. If the story had allowed it to flow, would have allowed us to kind of flow with him and really sit and dive into his dogma, his ignorance, his hatred. But it didn't. Instead, they gave us these quick scenes to let us know what exactly was his aim. He was just a cold figure from the beginning. Sean Penn, I think, played this character in a really interesting way. There's a menacing element to him, and I'm glad they did stay true to how they set up his character. But characters like that, for me, feel a little bit more. They feel a little bit more real when we're allowed to kind of dive into the past of this character, how they got to this point. And again, you're going to not center Persephone, but you're going to center Sean Penn and Leonardo DiCaprio's character, and it's really through her that we get these juxtapositions and these odd turns of their character, which they never allow for us to truly explore. And in saying that, I'm going to go ahead and go on next to Tiana's character, the one who I thought was probably the most ridiculous character in the movie, and really was mistreated, but also wasn't done well from many elements. And this is not a knock on Tiana Taylor. I've liked her in other roles. This one just didn't land for me. If you're going to look for a movie from her that does land, where I really got to see her acting chops and really began to enjoy her work, was 1001. I don't want to spoil anything. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And that's something that showed me Tiana Taylor does have the chops, and this movie just wasn't, in my opinion, a good choice for her to take on, given how little respect they actually gave that character. I think it also largely was a miscast. It came off as quite bizarre. She did not feel like a revolutionary at all in the movie, which was odd because they kept trying to play her up as one, and they met her family and said she came from a line of revolutionaries, but then she ended up just like ratting everybody out as if it was nothing, and it left you thinking like, wait, why would she do this? Where is this coming from? And these extreme decisions of ratting out and getting her other comrades assassinated selfishly. It's like, you have to give us more. Like, why would she make that decision? It was against what it seemed like you were trying to build up her character as. And I guess also particularly because they also were sexualizing her at every chance they got. I mean, like, it was close up on the hips. Her stomach was out the whole time she got pregnant. The stomach was up. There was the odd scene of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at her when she was shooting, saying she doesn't even act like she's pregnant, which again is like the director or the writers forcing in their opinions onto us. That's a pet peeve of mine. It really gets on my nerves when writers can't creatively make us feel or push us in a certain direction without forcing their thoughts into it. Like, oh, she's such a bad mother, she just want to be there. So that really turned me off. And overall, I found her character to be disrespectful to black female revolutionaries and radicals, specifically because this is on the dawn of Assad Shakur's passing, and there's been so many in this country who have been very strong, outspoken characters, and to put on this sexual tinge to them, just sex craze all over the place with this Persephone character who wasn't black in the original work. It just seemed like it was just random and weird. And then you put another black character in there and you call it Jungle Pussy. Then you have the Regina Hall character who you never dive into, just a plot device. It all just leads up to, why was this in here? Why? It doesn't make sense. I mean, like, at one point I thought it was like maybe I don't know what type of organization this was, but they never let us really get into what all these people were. In fact, it got more interesting for me was when all the main radicals kind of were assassinated, and then they had the one nerdy guy with the glasses. He seemed like maybe it should have been more of him in those early scenes, trying to make sense of all of this. And lastly, but not least, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Wood Harris. I'm a Wood Harris fan. I think he picks excellent scripts most of the time. He got killed off early enough in this movie that I'm going to give him a break and just hopefully he did not read the script. He didn't have access to the entire script. And I hope the check was worth it because his character was ridiculous. He didn't have enough in there for me to say it was disrespectful. But honestly, he was a useless device, just to kind of still harken back to past revolutionaries. And overall, I just found it distasteful. And I expect more from these actors, especially when they all come together. It really felt as though they really did a disservice to some of the really quality work that they've done in the past. All right, now let's hop into the visuals. This is probably the strongest area that this movie had for me, the strongest element of this movie for me. The angles of camera work I thought were exceptional. The panning as they escaped on the roof, that was a really dope montage. You could feel the budget, you could see the budget, you could hear the budget. And again, it was just the story and acting that really threw it off for me. But I can't take anything away from the visuals. I thought it was really strong. Some of those long shots of Sean Penn limping, I thought were really cool. It truly reflected his character and a distortion he exemplified throughout the movie. And vibes. All right, so the soundtrack continued to affirm the odd nature and the flow of the movie. That, for me, kind of proved that this was not done by accident. He wanted to make this feel clunky and goofy, which for such serious topics, I have no idea why would you want to go that way. This movie could have been a lot more impactful, a lot more thought provoking if it wasn't for all the goofy elements that were thrown in there. For what reason? Well, I guess we'll never know. You can see and hear the budget of this movie, but even with that, the script felt too big for it. For especially for like moments that were cut short and characters that were undeveloped. The vibe was off from the beginning. And there were moments where you're like, okay, I want to get into this. This is a really cool car chase scene. This daughter, is she going to be, some type of revolutionary as well? What's her whole stick? Are we going to see Persephone again? I mean, there were moments where you were like, okay, there's something to salvage here in this movie, but they never gave us the space to really salvage it. I think it was scared in its tone. Maybe there was some heavy edits that were done to kind of hide away from certain elements that I think were definitely in this story or pointing towards certain elements in the story. But the soundtrack, the vibes didn't do it any favors either. And that for me was a very intentional decision. And it just left me thinking like, why? You have this much of a budget, this high level of acting. Why are you adding in like these goofy sound effects, which really disrespect who I think who these characters kind of were inspired by. All right, last but not least, impact. I did not expect this video to be this long, but hey, we're here, so we're gonna knock this out. Impact. I find this director incredibly problematic and tone deaf. I'll say that. I said with this for a while. I tried to think of other things to not kick the director's back in. I looked at some of his other work, and I had to just land here. I find he's incredibly problematic and tone deaf. I also feel like this was ill researched, and it was a writing room that was extremely tone deaf. I would love this to break down all the writers, but this movie doesn't deserve any more of my time. The movie constantly flowed from the surface idiocy to the depth without any nuance, character development, or flow. This movie that is righteously indignant and full of itself to the point of disrespect. The words that I wrote as I was watching this movie, and Tiana Taylor played herself in taking this film. They did nothing but objectify her, and it was disrespectful to any female revolutionary. Period. Why was Leonardo DiCaprio's character centered here? And if he was centered, why was he so goofy? And why, while he was stumbling around, pretending to be a fake revolutionary, why were they constantly disrespecting all the other revolutionaries in the film? Either by they were getting like savagely assassinated or betrayed, or overly sexed, as in the Tiana Taylor scene. That nun sanctuary was completely misused. How do you not show them fighting back at all? Like, these clearly were women who were ex-revolutionaries who were fed up with the system, who escaped and were sitting quietly, just waiting for an explosive moment, and they don't give it to us. They show them in handcuffs without showing us any of the initial interaction between them and the small militia. It just didn't make sense. And it's like these opportunities were easy opportunities to make this a really compelling film, a really compelling piece of art. The art of this movie was right there. It was there for the taking, and they just insulted itself. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, why would this go this route? It felt like everything they needed was there, and they just decided to not go there with the message. And not necessarily the message, but just with making a statement. Classics make statements, and this is not a classic to me. This was not art. It was well shot, great audio, great sound, but the choices that were put behind that budget just did not land at all. And it's unfortunate, really. It really is unfortunate for this kind of movie with the type of talent it had. And so, yeah, this movie is A for me. I recommend seeing it at least once, and let's see what you think. I think will be a divisive movie. There'll be a lot of different opinions on it, but for me, this is definitely not worth another watch. I'm disappointed in it. This director, do better. That's all I have to say to him. I don't think I don't think there's anybody who's seriously into art and to the powerful messaging of this media would encourage films like this. And if he was kind of betrayed in the back end with the editing or anything else, I apologize. But hey, your name is on it, so you have to hold that stick. Yeah, nah, this ain't it. So again, 6.8 out of 10. Check it out at least once, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Peace. Man,